We're going to lead off by looking ahead to wildcard weekend. And by doing so, obviously reflecting on some of the key action from the final week of the regular season. Mike, looking at the wildcard round, I want to get this out straight off the bat. And actually, if you're down with this, I want to roll through game by game.
Excuse me,
Mm.
it's the super
Oh, I'm
wild
sorry.
card round.
I stand firmly corrected. The super. Okay, what we'll do is every time I refer to it, I'll point to you and you can drop in a super and then I'll carry on with wildcard weekend. So, Mike, I want to look at each game in the
Super
I
wild card
can't
weekend.
believe you got it wrong. Amazing. Well, let's try that again. Okay. I want to look at every game in the
Super wild card
wildcard
weekend.
weekend and put forward a case for the underdog to win, because I can't remember a wildcard round in recent memory where I think there is a genuinely credible case for every underdog, or at least lower seed, we'll call it. I'm not sure exactly how the Vegas odds have shaken up. I haven't looked. I'm no prop Obi across that. But each of the games, I think there's a credible case for the lower seed to pull off an upset. And I want to put that to you and get your take on it all. So why don't we start with the first game of the weekend, the Browns, who are the 5th seed. We knew that anyway going into the final week of the weekend. That was one of the things that was locked in, which is why, of course, they rolled out their backups against Cincinnati. They traveled to Houston, who took the South in thrilling fashion. Of course, they locked down their wild card spot on Saturday night and then locked down the division with the Jags' complete capitulation against the Titans. So a huge amount to unpick there. We'll get to the Jags meltdown in a minute, but let's first start with this matchup specifically and weighing up the underdog potential, which is the Browns as the 5th seed, right, on the road. They rest all those starters in the blowout, so they're all rested and tried and tested strategy often that will help. Joe Flacco, a second Super Bowl run is in the star zone, Mike. Cleveland have the number 2 ranked defense in the league right now in terms of defensive DVOA. And the Texans, I don't know, the emotional overload of getting over the line, being this incredible story. Maybe it's going to be one game too far. Can the Browns take the Texans on the road? Mike, break it down for us.
Yeah, I think they can. I actually think that they won't be the underdogs. I wouldn't be surprised if Houston were getting a point and a half or something at home for this game. I haven't looked at the lines yet, so I don't know.
But you're with me.
I
The
was very
5th seed
pleased with
taking
my
the lower seed taking out the higher seed is where I'm going
yeah.
with.
No, I mean, but that's the case. I think there are a couple of games where the lower seed might not be the dog. But and remember too, all the lower seeds are playing on the road. We can just get that one out of the way right away.
Sure.
I was really pleased with myself on Saturday because I did really well. I had Pittsburgh, I had Houston, I had New Orleans, I had Cincinnati, I had Tennessee. Tampa was not a hard pick, and Detroit. And the only one I didn't have was I thought New England in the snow
Yeah.
was going to beat the Jets, regardless, and they were horrible. I mean, absolutely horrible. But I think that Houston. The problem is you went through. I mean, just your summary there pretty much explains the whole thing. Houston had a tough time stopping Indianapolis's run game, but the Indy defense was not really good. And Stroud had a really good game as ever, and Nico had a brilliant game. But you remember, John Taylor had 180 some odd yards, and Moss had another 30 on just like 5 or 6 carries. So they're not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to do that if Ford is playing well. But otherwise, the Browns, they have a good line, but obviously no Chubb. Kareem Hunt's got to be the other running back, and they can pressure Flacco, Anderson especially. But they're a good defensive team. I think it's a fascinating game, and I think Cleveland ought to win. Ought to be favorites in this because I think they are the better team, but they're just flawed enough through injury primarily to be vulnerable there. And Houston's at home, so that may help them. And like I said, I think Houston will probably get a point and a half at home, which is funnily enough is what Indy got at home against them. So
on the just going to the game against the Titans, there was a lot of talk of the call made on 4th and 1 by the Colts when they decided not to run it. Right, you mentioned how much success they were having with the ground game. Was it a well drawn up play, badly executed? Was it a mistake not
Yeah.
to? Is that the bottom line with it? That we 2020
Yeah,
hindsight.
I think so. Although it's always tempting in those situations to say keep it simple.
Yeah,
And but if the play works, everybody says brilliant play call, and if the play doesn't, you should have kept it simple. And do you really have faith? I mean, Quentin Moore, you can't run behind Quentin Nelson. With Jonathan Taylor, it's kind of although in fairness, Taylor's not really a hit the hole quick
fair.
push forward kind of back. He kind of picks his holes. He's very maneuverable. But you have Moss there as well.
Can
I think DeMeco Ryans probably gets Coach of the Year, although his main competition is probably Stefanski,
you,
or maybe Sean McVay. Although the voting I think takes place before the playoffs start, so
yeah,
these
that's
won't
right.
affect those.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll lock it in. But yeah, that would be a Stefanski. Interesting. I hadn't really considered him in the mix. McVay definitely. That's a
I
great
think
shout.
you have to. The reason he's not being considered is that superficially Cleveland was a
Good team.
good, top team. They were either picked for first or second in that division by almost everybody, and that doesn't consider all the losses they had.
Yeah.
They went through 4 quarterbacks. They didn't have Nick Chubb for the whole season. Their offensive line had a lot of injuries in the middle of the season. So I think he's done a really good job coaching
Mm.
there. But because Houston, nobody thought that Houston would have a decent team. They were, and everybody thought that the Rams would be rebuilding.
Yeah.
And I think DeMeco Ryans has done an amazing thing that very few people could do, and then McVay has just coached his butt off.
Yeah, and you could put the Bucks in that conversation as well. Of course, that nobody gave them any realistic hope of a playoff run, and here they are. We'll get to them in a minute. Someone made the point, Mike. I'm sure a number of people have the throwing back to last season and the Colts Texans game, where the Texans blew the number one spot with the win, which basically got him Stroud, right? Forced their hand to take Stroud, whatever. I mean, unpick all the stuff that
Yeah,
came out about that. I mean,
and that's going to be an ongoing discussion, for years to come. And I go right back to what I said at the time. I was surprised that Carolina took Bryce Young because they had Frank Reich as their coach.